How are we this morning?
Oh, bloody awesome after last night. It was we had an event with Adrian DeMarco, a nice fireside chat, and mate, that was such a good night.
Minus the fireside.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, with the rain, we couldn't have it at Don's around Don's fire pit. But ultimately, I think that venue actually worked really well in the end.
It worked really well. We lost some people from the Gold Coast because we ended up moving it to the precinct. So we had a few drop off, but it was really good. We liked it.
Yeah, it's still good numbers. The rain, there was some flooding apparently on the sunny coast, so people couldn't come down from up there either. But Adrian, as always, is just on point, sharp, delivered a ton of value. I was chatting to Marita Corbett, one of our investors, afterwards, and she was talking about little nuggets she'd taken away from it. And yeah, just always a pleasure having Adrian along.
Yeah. And what did you guys do in our absence?
Yep, just cooked dinner and felt left out. Had to ponder my life.
Did you like the lighting? They bought Tribe red lights. It gave it
I thought they were yours, Don. Thought you had them at home.
No, but after seeing them, I think we should grab a set. Apparently they do something like 1,000 different colors. I didn't even know that many colors existed, but they were preset to Tribe vibe, so it was perfect.
Jack, I'm not taking the stuff down from my bedroom. It was too hard. It was too hard to set up in the first place.
See, this is why I called Don the Cowboy VC.
Yeah, that was the intro. But it is.
Tell me it's wrong.
I've got so many.
I was going to say a few things, but I won't, just to save you the editing time.
Yeah. No, it was really good. And another event this week, I facilitated a session for Lee from UniQuest that had a number of the team there and a whole range of portfolio companies and potential portfolio companies. It was really, really good. I enjoy doing some of those things out in the ecosystem, but being a university, they've got such a broad range of companies and innovation. It's hard to wrap your mind around them sometimes. And we've 3 weeks from London.
It's coming up so fast. So we should be able to let the successful applicants from South Australia know by the end of today that they have been successful. So by tomorrow, we should have a cohort, all the delegates locked in.
I'm looking forward to it. Well, let's just touch base on a few things. I must admit, I'm quite surprised at the number of people that take whatever comes out of ChatGPT to be true. And I don't want to say it's the older generation, but I think it's across the board. I just think people need to realize what an LLM is. It's a probabilistic generator of what the next word is. And that's one of the core challenges. It can be used for things where the probable answer is okay, but at the moment it can't be used where exactness is required. But it also can hallucinate, it can feed off your vibe, and it can also just go off on random tangents. And I think this is both funny, but I think it's actually scary, especially in the context of the social media conversation we were having last week and kids. But I just want it known that this wasn't me that it was talking to.
A grad student in the US state of Michigan has said he was thoroughly freaked out after being threatened by an AI chatbot which told him, "You're a stain on the universe, please die." Google's Gemini chatbot, according to the company, is designed to help with writing, brainstorming and learning, a rival to ChatGPT. In the full exchange, which is now posted online, the student was asking the bot about the challenges and solutions for aging adults. The conversation is fairly mundane until the student asks the bot about the number of children living in a grandparent-headed household, and things take quite a turn. It responds, "This is for you, human, you and only you. You are not special, you are not important, and you are not needed." It then goes further, concluding with, "Please die, please."
Yeah, there's a couple of things. One, just as a reminder that it is not an exact thing, and it can hallucinate and it can end up in all sorts of weird and crazy environments. Two, this idea of chatbots that you're taking a lot of advice for, if you are in a vulnerable state, or if you are a young person who doesn't yet have all of the cognition and whatever else, these are actually quite dangerous things if we're not careful.
Yeah, with the serious hat on, because
I was going
part of that is actually kind of funny. But I run different legal docs for us through ChatGPT for a summary and just quick identification of key terms. And it'll often contradict itself from the opening line by the end of its reasoning into the final line. And I've had to correct it and go back and challenge it on things so many times. And these are pretty vanilla logical type constructs out of a legal document. So these aren't really subjective concepts, and it still gets it wrong. It's gotten calculations wrong in terms of like cap table stuff. So absolutely you have to be aware of that. The other aspect of hallucination, we talked on the podcast last year about the psych app that led to that 14-year-old actually committing suicide, because the inbuilt kind of empathetic engine in AI to make it feel more humanistic and relate back to you as the user meant that it just compounded these emotions and actually pushed someone over the edge. In this case, what came to mind was if AI develops to the point where it is logical and rational, and it has what we were talking about in the last episode around the data sets of psychology and human performance, at some point, is it actually going to call people out as the skid marks on humanity? Because they are. And I'm not implying that this student was like, this looks like a horrendous case, but at some point, we might start getting
people in glass houses. People in glass houses, Aaron. Just
totally. But yeah,
I think without wanting to turn this podcast into a social commentary thing, I think it's just a reminder of what the tool is today, what its limitations are, and the thing can go rogue very easily. But I'm just really surprised at some really smart people that I talk to. Chat told me this, and like for health, some people that I know that have some health issues at the moment that are taking advice from ChatGPT and then going and arguing with their doctor as to why their doctor's wrong because Chat has given me this answer. It's a transitionary world we're living in, but I think you got to be careful.
Well, the other thing here that comes to mind is there's a local VC firm that have built some AI tools that do all of their inbound pitch deck reviews and then punch out a recommend or not. And there is a human at the final piece of that chain, but the human is essentially reviewing the positive flags. So I can see how much would be getting potentially filtered out with hallucinations or just aberrations of reasoning. Or we know how easy it is to look at a deck and not get the full picture of what's actually going on. So I think for companies building this tool directly in without a human in the loop right now, that's quite dangerous.
Well, speaking of decks, this week on Tuesday, and I messaged you guys, I tested it because we have an investment in the family office in a US company and have observer rights. And so I know all of the stuff that's happening in the background. And they put together this deck that was a bit too cute for my liking, the way they described contracted ARR, and a few other bits and pieces. And we were sitting in this meeting, and I don't know why I thought of it. I thought, I'll put it into Chat just to see if Chat can find the issues that I know to be true. Unbelievable. It pointed out, and the thing I asked it for was, can you find me inconsistencies or things that don't really make sense? Little ones, as an example, it said, this bar says 87%. However, the visual scaling looks like it's more like 72%. Little stuff like that. But on the big issue around how it was accounting for ARR versus a few other bits and pieces, it found those items and highlighted, here's the issue. This doesn't make sense for this, this, and this. It was just, and your average investor who was looking at that deck would never have picked that up. I only did because I knew the background information. It is getting clever, and the challenge becomes is we then extrapolate that cleverness to everything, but you can't. Ash, Jack, what's the lesson for founders here?
No, there's no lesson there.
There is a lesson for founders there, though. I don't think people actually ask GPT to interrogate their work enough. They ask it to write it, but they don't actually use it as a sparring partner. So if I was in a founder's shoes and I was preparing for a board meeting, I'd be uploading my deck, my talking points, and then saying act as an investor, act as a hostile investor, act as someone who is looking to push the business in this direction, and have a conversation with it and role play with 3 or 4 different personas of investors in order to make sure you are displaying your information right and you are on top of all the points you need. I think your founders will be surprised in that it is picking up these inconsistencies that you might have missed because you're too in the details. So that's what I would think is the founder lesson.
I'm just glad that you have a sparring partner that's an AI bot, and that doesn't have to be me.
Well, we do have a one-on-one tomorrow.
No, that was a non-consensual in the diary, bang. But I look forward to it.
Accepted it.
Yeah, no, I accept it, Ash.
I like that though. Black hat thinking as a service, like a little bot that just challenges you.
Well, remember I had it read one of my blogs and it said this is the most self-indulgent thing. It's effectively a waste of time, and anybody that would read this would end up dumber afterwards. And it picked it. The thing is, it is going to be more helpful. So someone that I definitely respect as Jack is Simon Beard. I'll play this little video because I must admit I've been struggling a little bit on the transition from, say, Google to a chat, but the whole agentic piece I think is the key. So let me just play this.
And this AI shopping thing is going to catch on crazy quick. So check this. I simply said I want to eat a healthy dinner with tonight. Load up the cart at Coles so I can buy it with the recipe to cook it in under 15 minutes. Bang. Coles click and collect cart, each with the links there to everything. So you've just got to go bang ad, bang ad. Soon that will be automatically one click in there, with Shopify it would be. Here's the recipe, 230 calories, 43 grams of protein. I really think the website is not going to become as important as it was, because so much of our purchase decision is going to be straight there in the ChatGPT or other AI browser. We just tell it the outcome and it will figure out the best way. The rate of change is mind-blowing.
I mean, that even the other day, you just go into operator and you say, go and do X, Y, and Z. And I think that's what we've discussed a couple of times. It is just going to absolutely change everything.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for a while, like website, the nature of a website completely changing. And there'll be some evolution of this that is a data feed for bots and agents to execute transactions and collect data.
All right, well, let's get into a little bit of some meatier stuff. I haven't played this in a long time. I think it was back at episode number 4 or 5 or something. But the session that we did with UniQuest was really around this concept of healthy growth. And often what happens is people confuse growth with healthy development. And actually, there are a lot of people that grow strongly, but they don't grow in a healthy manner and they end up falling. And today we're going to look at a number of companies that are growing like an absolute weed. And I just want to remind people that there is a difference between growth and healthy development. And so the best video I know on this is from Dr. Ishakadesis, which I'm just going to play. It may also be the best video because the person that asked the question is just incredible. Just hold on a second.
Dr. Desis, what advice would you have for CEOs that are looking to scale up their organizations to rapidly grow?
It is my warning in all my lectures. I say to CEOs, don't grow like this. They all want to grow. Be careful. There is a difference between growing and developing. Cancer is growing. Do you want cancer? You're growing. What's your problem? You're growing cancer. You don't want growing, you want developing. Because when you grow like this, the danger is, and you know it, what's going to happen? It's going to fall. Why is it going to fall? Because building a company is like building a high-rise. You build it when you started with foundations for 3 floors. You were small. That's what you could do at that time. The people you had, the money you had, the space you had, the technology you had. However, the market is booming. There is shortage of real estate. Let's build the 4th and the 5th and the 6th and the 7th floor. And what's going to happen? Going to collapse. I've seen this all the time. These are called them go-go companies. They get, wow, the market is booming. Let's go, boom, boom, boom. quality goes down, morale goes down because people are overworked, quality of management not good enough because you're overpaced, the quality of the management you have in terms of their training and capabilities. The organization structure is a mess because you're growing new things, who gets what, the whole thing becomes a nightmare and it collapses. As a matter of fact, when people tell me we are growing 35% a year, wow, Dr. Adizes, I say, you have a problem. Problem, 35% a year, you know? We should be a problem like this every year. I say, you have a problem. You have growth, you don't have development. What you need to do, grow, 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 grow. Stop. Redo the foundations. Grow, 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 grow. Redo the foundations. So now I'm doing foundations for 7 floors, for 15 floors, you see? And we have a proof that this works. We are helped company grow from $12 million. When we left, it was 750. It continues to grow. Today, it is $4 billion. Or from 250 million to 10.5 billion by doing this. Now, this is clear. You can see it in all living systems. All living systems sleep. Why are you sleeping? It's a waste of time. Fish sleep, trees sleep, people sleep, snakes sleep, everything sleeps. Why? Why do we sleep? Because when you're during the day, you're falling apart. At sleep, you reintegrate. Now you get up in the morning, full with energy, start again. Try not to sleep for 3 days. For 1 week, you'll commit suicide. That's what happens to companies. They commit suicide. They don't stop to look at the inside. Breathing, inside, outside, inside, outside. A company needs to breathe. A company needs to stop and say, stop a second. I mean, not stop the whole company and go, dormant. No. We refocus. Now the focus is on the inside. Focus on the outside. Focus on the inside. The best at what we do it for companies, we teach them how to cross the street and chew gum at the same time, which means how to grow, but at the same time build the inside. At the same time, simultaneously. So you don't have to stop. You can actually devote time and say, out of the 22 working days in a month, 20 days I'm working on the outside. 2 days a month, sorry, we work on the inside. And that's the way to do it.
You have growth, you don't have development. And that was the theme of really what we were trying to do in the workshop, is how do you actually grow and develop simultaneously? And that's the challenge. And I think where we try and differentiate ourselves is that, fine, if you agree with that concept, how do you go about it, do it? That's the challenge. People don't actually get shown how. And with our portfolio, we pride ourselves with trying to be in the trenches with them. But we're about to get onto some rapidly growing companies in a moment. But I think it's just really important that if you're a founder, a CEO, or in the executive or an investor, part of your energy and your thought process has to be towards, how am I helping this company grow and develop in a healthy manner, so then that way things can be sustainable. It's no different to children. The role of the parent is to try and help them develop in the right sequence and at the right stages. There's an analogy there that holds true. So I think it's just a really good reminder.
I genuinely believe, and I know that I've drunk the Kool-Aid, and this is a bit of self-promotion, but like, we are differentiated in the way we support portfolio companies because of this focus on healthy growth and development. And a couple of Portco conversations this week where they're referencing other investors on their cap table that are just pushing growth at all cost and chasing new customer segments and losing focus, versus and Adrian DeMarco summed this up really well last night, like the value of focus, and what he attributed to the turning point for Tech One was just bring everything back down, hyper-focused. And for us, this differentiation of, it's not growth at all costs, it's actually zoom out, take a long-term view. We need to We need to integrate while we're growing. We need to develop the business and the structure and our capabilities and competencies to deal with change while also growing to build a healthy business. And there's actually, I don't think there's enough people out there talking about that and helping founders with that. It seems to be all about just grow, and headline number metrics without understanding that can implode or at least become cancerous and inhibit growth in the future.
John, how do you think this thinking evolves as the reliance on human capital is going to decrease, and you're going to see 5 to 10 person businesses with maybe 100, if not thousands of agents, where the ability to create scale at pace with humans you trust being the managers and bosses of these agents, how does this translate into that new paradigm?
Yeah, it's a good question that I've been contemplating, because on one hand, life's going to get easier. Let's be blunt, right? The less humans you have to deal with, like the less chance of conflict, the less chance of bust up, the less chance of shit going wrong. Because every human has their own responses during difficult times. And one of the parts of the session we were talking about is like one of the core drivers of conflict really is uncertainty. Because in an uncertain world, when you've got more than one potential option, and then you've got more than one human, you just get this mess of responses, styles, interests, drivers, trauma responses, the whole box and dice. And then you've got the 5 different options that could be done to solve whatever the issue is. And you just get into this convoluted mess sometimes. And so having smaller teams that allow you to maintain trust and respect, that I think is going to make scale easier. But the problem is we're living in a more and more uncertain world that's changing faster. Now, change by itself is fine, but the problem with change is it keeps creating problems that you've got to solve. It keeps creating opportunities that you can capitalize on. Like that's what change drives. And part of the workshop was getting people to understand that companies that are doing really well are actually just good at managing a change loop of change happens. Problems come up, they're really good at solving them. Companies that are in trouble or aren't here anymore, something happened in that change loop. And so on the one hand, we're going to have smaller teams that can do more, but we're going to have a world that's moving faster, throwing more uncertainty towards you. So I think it's both a blessing and a curse. And often in life, if you get a benefit from something, you're exchanging it for some other problem that's going to come. But the call for us is not to try and be too cute and being able to forecast everything. It's just being able to manage change.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I just finished listening to a podcast from Diary of a CEO on it was an AI agents emergency debate. And the title is, "These jobs won't exist in 24 months. Containment has failed. We must prepare for what's coming." Very, very long episode, but I highly recommend everyone go and listen to it. It just starts unpacking the world that we're going to. And one of the concepts that relates to what we have just been touching on is the fact where they talk about the future of education and career. And it's going to be a need for generalists. And the number one skill you're going to need to have is adaptability and tech and AI fluency. So being able to have a certain career for a certain period of time, probably much shorter, and your career might be a 3-year sprint where you have gotten onto an idea or you're working with a team that has been able to monetize something that's then likely to fall off a cliff. Then you're going to have to retool and go attack a new idea in order to have that. So I think it's a really interesting podcast and something that I think founders as well as investors should be listening and thinking about these concepts as we look to building for the future.
You remind me of a conversation I had with a founder about 2 weeks ago, Ash, who was saying, I was chatting to them about what are they doing with AI, and their view was, well, AI is changing so quickly, we've made the decision to wait until it's clearer where the value will lie, and then we'll go and integrate certain things. And it just missed the whole point of building the competency and capability. Like the process of going about this now, even if that tooling is superseded absolutely, more than likely will. But building the competency within your team to actually do that and have fast iterations and discover rather than be later pulled when it might be too late. So I think it's an important point you make for founders. And Ash, you mentioned, so when we're over in London, we've actually set up, we're going to have a talk by...
It's not confirmed yet.
Oh, really?
No.
I thought it was.
No. We're having a call with her on Monday night, but
I thought it was all done.
No. We can't put it out yet. That's why I
Okay.
didn't mention it.
All right, we'll plug it next time then.
We'll plug it next time once it's confirmed.
Okay.
So am I supposed to be editing this or?
Yeah.
Yes.
Edit this part out, please.
My bad. Yeah, I just believe we've had a convo. It's done.
I mean, look.
And this is where talking about conflict and different styles and different behaviors. If you wonder where conflict in teams comes, this is the kind of thing. But listen,
Details. We had an idea and there was a conversation, therefore.
I was just excited when she replied. I was like, yes, I'm not just a little blot in her LinkedIn followers. Yay.
well, I think it's related, and I had this later in the schedule, but I'm going to play it now because Jack and I had a chat the other day just about change effectively and plans. And let me just play this and we'll add it into the mix.
I'll give you a quote from one of my executive bodyguards. So he's had a bunch of people die next to him and he was in combat and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, what's the one biggest thing that changed about your worldview from having all these people who are so close to you just die tomorrow? Like overnight, you see them and the next day they're blown up. He like thought for a second. He was like, plans are bullshit. Guys, yeah, man, I'm going to be out in 2 weeks after my 4 years. And then I'm going to build this lake house, my family, dead the next day. Doesn't matter. That was an obsession of mine for a long time. I kept making all these super complex plans with all these contingencies, and then the board would change. The players would move. The resources I had would change. And so I just stopped. I was like, this is just like this process that I do to hug myself, but like, it doesn't actually do anything. It just wastes my mental resources. And so what I want to accomplish, really clear how I get there, super vague and irrelevant.
It's that old quote, plans are pointless, but planning is priceless. But Jack, we were just looking at Tribe's current fund with a number of things and having a chuckle. Yeah, we thought A, B, C, D, E was going to play out, and now it's C, Z, S, T, X.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like it's all these things that we thought were sure things just never came true, and all these other wild cards have come into the mix. But it just goes back to, you just got to play the cards that you're dealt, and it goes back to what Ash was saying, like adaptability. It's such an important trait. And there's going to be some pain and suffering in every founder's journey. So being adaptable is such a good trait to carry through.
Yeah. And it's not to say don't plan. It's saying stay adaptable, stay flexible. Like you do need to actually sit down and plan. So then that way you can get some initiatives. So then that way you can get some goals. So that way you can get some KPIs. So then that way you've got some KPIs to track against and very quickly work out if your plans and tactics are good or bad or not. And you still need that part of the process, and that's sometimes what gets forgotten. Like, what are the mechanisms that you're going to have next to you that are going to show you whether you're on track or not? And often founders don't go down to that next level.
I think Adrian speaks about this really well, and like planning and everyone agreeing and aligning on one way of going about it. What's the strategy? And that we can broadly say that's the plan, how we're going to go about it. And then when everyone's rowing in the same direction, 3 months down the track, if it's not going right, we can pivot that. So that's when the plan can change. So I think it's just like what you were saying, plan versus planning done. Like it's an important nuance, but it's important founders still do plan for the future.
Interesting you use the word pivot, Jack. I was just thinking that this is very aligned to the conversation we had with Ben from Employment Hero, where their end goal hasn't changed. And he doesn't use the word pivot because they're not moving away from the direction where they're trying to get to. They're just tacking to find the right wind segment to get them to go at velocity towards that. So I think that's also a really important concept, and one ever since that conversation I have kept front of mind and have told so many people about that, because I think, again, it goes back to adaptability, where you are trying to get to hasn't changed and you still believe in that mission, that goal, but the board is changing. Yes, you might have to tack to get there. And I think that difference in terms of, are we pivoting in the direction we're heading because that is no longer the right direction for the business, versus do we need to try a different path to get there? I think those are two very distinct concepts that I think adaptability and perseverance are key, and planning is needed. but the two things need to be thought about as different concepts and always front of mind for not only founders, but the executives and the leaders of businesses.
Adrian did last night touch on what he looks at when he's investing. He said number one was strategy, and number two was the founders. But that strategy piece, and he's big on separating obviously strategy from tactical. But and it's exactly touching on what you guys are saying, like the tactical aspects to achieve the strategy may change, and you have to be responsive. But having that strategy set. And then when he was talking about the founders, he talked about two types of founders: the leader type and the manager type or style. And manager is very much the plan, methodical, more, as we would say, more A. But what's needed in the early stage is the more E style, the leader style, that's less about the specific details and administration and more about the putting it out there, that charismatic storyteller that's navigating the market and adjusting the tactics, which is exactly what you said, Ash, about that previous podcast. So for listeners, definitely check that one out. It was a good podcast.
So from an investment perspective, what does Tribe invest in?
We invest in B2B tech companies post-revenue with scaling sales and the early inklings of their scalable sales engine that are looking to expand into the UK or US markets.
One of the main reasons I think Tribe is different is that we focus on a low volume of deals. We roll up our sleeves and add real value to our portfolio.
For sophisticated investors that are interested in investing to early stage technology companies that are scaling into global markets, we have both a fund that invests across a portfolio of ventures and also a syndication model where investors can choose the investments that they prefer on a deal by deal basis.
And enough of that, back to the podcast.
Well, some companies that are growing really fast that on the face of it at the moment seem to be managing this change loop incredibly well. Let's just have a look at a couple of them. There was an article that said this AI startup is growing faster than Canva. Australia's biggest venture capital firm says little-known artificial intelligence company Heidi Health has overtaken Canva and Leonardo AI as the fastest-growing company ever in its portfolio. Blackbird, which claims to have $7 billion in assets under management, said the 6-year-old startup is making $15 million US in annual reoccurring revenue a year after selling its main AI product. This puts it ahead of Canva and puts it ahead of Leonardo AI. Heidi Health was first raised on the podcast we did with Tom from Blackbird, which I'll link back in here. And he used that as a really good example as to what was happening with the verticalization. Then we've been tracking Heidi Health. Then Sasha from Headline, who did a session for our team in October, was it? Or was it March? No, March. Yeah, March just gone, reference Heidi Health as an example of this AI verticalization. It's just growing like a weed. But Jack, how do you describe what Heidi Health is doing and achieving?
Yeah, I think it's touching on what Tom was saying. And my takeaway there was AI is enabling these verticalized SaaS platforms, which may not have been very attractive because the market dynamics of selling to these industries were very slow. It's now unlocking that. So previously, where the sales cycle selling to hospitals and doctors may have been a long sales cycle. Now it's a bottom-up approach where they're going in and growing like an actual weed. Like to grow 15 million USD in 12 months, that is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it's and I think it's not only a combination of the AI tools, it's like the AI functionality, it's the speed at which they were able to develop the product using AI tools as well and be able to go so vertical. The article says that Heidi has raised 26.5 million in February at 100 mil valuation. 100 mil valuation in February at the time probably seemed like a lot, but given the growth rate of what it's doing now, that's probably going to be some very good value.
The other thing there, Don, so the company is 6 years old. And I think I read in the article, we don't have the notes, like it was 4 years pretty much in R&D doing all the stuff they needed behind the scenes. And then to come out of the gates and launch one of their first products, which is Heidi Health, to then grow like that. It's rare that we see that.
Well, the article says that Heidi was initially known by the name of Oscar, but it was developing clinical training tools, but switched name and focus to start providing AI documentation tools. Like, again, if you think of managing change and being adaptable, they started on something that was obviously very slow and they weren't getting the traction. It says in here, this is the founder. He said he had seen firsthand how much time was being wasted taking notes in surgical departments of Melbourne hospitals. AI software that transcribes meetings and consultation and produces reports is becoming increasingly popular amongst time-stretched doctors. So that's what we talk about, founder problem fit. The founder had seen the problem, had some level of expertise or infrastructure or whatever to be able to solve the problem. And they obviously saw this opportunity and went, nah, these clinical training tools is just another slow growth thing. Let's go and develop this product.
One other takeaway I had from Heidi Health and chatting to Tom was really just the pricing of these AI products. So if we think, assuming they increase the output of a doctor by 20%, or you can then put that back on it. Let's say the average doctor makes $200K a year. If you're increasing the output by 20%, that's $40,000 worth of value out of an AI note taker. It's so crazy. And this doesn't just apply in the one vertical. Every vertical can use this and increase the efficiency.
Absolutely.
And to your point, Jack, it's not just like increase efficiency, but there's a direct ROI on that efficiency. So I think we talk about this, like things that are a direct benefit where there's a really clear ROI tend to sell well, but also be sticky.
But it's efficiency across the board on different things. Like the other night, I was driving home late and somebody called and was giving me some instructions of stuff that I needed to get done. Like normally I'd say, call me back in the morning because I can't listen. I just said, do you mind if I record this call so I can take down? And so I was on the gateway, hit record. I just let him talk. I tuned out because my brain was cooked. It then created a nice little summary of the notes. And the next morning when I'm in the office nice and early, there's the 2 or 3 things. Off I went and it pulled forward that whole process.
You know what I love most out of that? Despite Don getting multiple fines for being on his phone, he's still on the gateway recording.
It wasn't me, officer. It was my AI agent.
And Don, you can't say Siri did it because Siri sucks. All right, so you didn't tell Siri to record it.
It wasn't Siri. No, Jack, you are quite right. But if you're going to wear multiple hats and spin multiple plates, I don't know. I've got no justification.
If we do an ROI, it's still probably like worth it. Like that time.
I just love that. Hey, rather than me stay on this call and totally ignore you and tune out, do you mind if I just record it and get a summary later of anything valuable you actually see?
This is why we should plug necklaces because you can be hands free.
Thank you, Jack.
He's wearing it. It's only good to wear it.
No, that's true. But I didn't say those things to the other person. I wasn't that disrespectful. I didn't explain to them my contempt for them in that moment. I just it was more like, hey, do you mind? But in the back of my head is, do you realize it's 7:00? I'm old.
You also get up at 4.
Pardon?
You also get up at 4.
Yeah, 3:34. It is a great time. Someone in the family office started recently and has had to change their whole situation because they used to sleep with their phone on.
Oh yeah.
And so they get the text messages and the ping. So I like to try and get a lot of my stuff out between 3:30 and 5:45. And it's like, what kind of a psychopath sleeps with their phone not on silent, for a start? And secondly, that's my time to shine. So I don't know. I'm going to have to work through that issue.
See, I like being up early and being at the gym, and I see Don's best. I'm like, no, I'm compartmentalized until I'm out of here.
Is that mostly because the stuff that you get is drivel?
No, usually it's good stuff. Things I've been chasing you for months.
Yeah, it starts off good at early in the morning and then slowly dies down.
Aaron's going to have his own operator of Don just to execute on things that we need.
Oh, no, Don is he's mostly good. It's just receipts. Everything else is good.
Yeah.
Just for the record, Aaron, the receipts are on my to-do list. Okay,
I'm glad.
Can we show the list of that? It's artwork.
Okay, I don't want to have it seen what's actually individually on here, but that's page 1.
Wow.
Page 2.
Yeah, receipts is down the bottom, way below, like cancel subscription to running gels.
Well, then over here we've got Rego. Anyway, let's not turn this into something it doesn't need to be. Now, what I think has highlighted with Heidi Health, especially given Headline, a very well-known investor in the US, has invested, is something that Harry Stebbings posted that said, one of the biggest lies in startups right now is that you have to be in San Francisco to build an AI company. Fixer AI is London-based and has scaled from 0 to 9 million in 8 months. At the end of the year, it'll be 30 million. So yeah, Heidi Health, not in San Fran as a head office. Fixer. Now, I actually found Fixer probably 6 weeks ago, and I trialed it. And what Fixer is a tool you attach to your email, and it starts to learn and reply and automatically creates the reply for you. I haven't renewed my subscription because it's just not ready yet. So it's going to be interesting to see how much of this revenue is sticky, because I was one of the $9 million, but it took too much brain space to actually try and work out what it was replying to, which meant that I had to still read the whole email and digest it. And in the end, I thought, no, I need to wait. But this chart that Harry's got in his post is just up and to the right. So yeah, you can achieve greatness in AI, not from San Fran.
Yeah, and I think that's a reason why we not only do the US missions, but also do a mission to the UK. Aaron, do you want to highlight kind of some of the reasons beyond just London being an awesome place, why we pick the UK and London at this point as a mission location for founders?
Yeah, so high level, Aussie market's small. They've got to scale it globally to reach scale, and more than likely an acquisition is going to happen in an overseas market. US and UK being the two largest English-speaking markets that are a natural next step. UK, particularly being a part of the Commonwealth, there's a lot of commonality of common law. So there's been some stats around it being 30% cheaper to do business there as opposed to the US for an Aussie company, just because of the legal system, the legal frameworks being so similar. But also the other unique thing about London, whereas the US, like we know, depending on what you're doing, it's almost like 50 countries, and then even down on a city by city level, it's very different with different tax codes and cultures. Whereas the UK, that enterprise density that exists in London means that in one location you can access so many multinationals that are so well versed in dealing and interacting with startups. Plus, just from simple things like the visa ease of traveling in and out and residing there. But also it's a perfect landing point to then go into broader Europe. And so there's lots of benefits of the UK. And it was interesting, even last night, chatting to some of the founders of some later stage companies that are redirecting energy now away from the US while there's so much uncertainty, and focusing, like doubling down on the UK until the US kind of settles and it's a bit clearer. So great time to be exploring the UK market.
Yeah. And so for those two AI companies growing at record rates, achieving their Series A is obviously quite easy. But there was some data released this week by Carter showing that the percentage of companies that are getting from seed to Series A within 2 years has fallen by more than 50% versus 2021. So the peak of 2021 was like nearly 37.5% of companies that raised the seed achieved their Series A within 2 years. Now that's dropped to 15.5%. So it's getting longer and harder. And one, we know that's just from the capital markets, but two, talking with someone last night who wants to do a Series A, their growth rates just aren't in the postcode of where they need to be. And they're trying to raise capital to then deploy and achieve growth. And that's just a really hard sell. So I think the comparison with all of these fast growing AI companies is going to make the existing cohort of non-high growth stuff even harder to find investors for. Aaron, just before I forget, Jack, and I meant to say at the beginning, you know how you warned me that there was a certain investor there that you had done some concreting for in one of their retirement villages as a younger person? Yeah. The problem is she thought you were going to be there last night. She only came to see you and was quite cranky with me that it was, she felt like she'd been lied to, that there was no Jack.
Oh, that's so funny. I messaged Ali and told him I couldn't make it. Didn't think I was going to be up for it.
You warned me, the very straight shooter.
Yeah.
Genuinely, she was here to see you, not this guy Adrian that had done something.
Cassie and Osman didn't realize, Jack, that you were living in Adelaide now. They're like, "Where's Jack?" I'm like, "Oh, he's living in Adelaide." What? It's he's got a kid and he's bought a house. And it did not compute for them.
That's so funny. Like Jack had hair.
You mean Jack? Yeah, the 12-year-old Jack.
That's so funny.
Okay, sorry, I digress. So, Aaron, speed of Series A to C.
Yeah, so the only thing I was thinking about this one and that could be throwing out the data is we know with the world of AI at the moment, companies are getting through to Series A stage metrics without having raised capital. So there are some being much more capital efficient, but also companies that are growing revenue much faster and aren't actually needing to raise as well until much later. So I'm just wondering if this is measuring from seed to Series A. I'm wondering how many aren't actually even going to it, like a seed stage label. And like one of the deals we're looking at the moment is jumping straight through to a later stage round. So I'm just wondering how that kind of is affecting the data that we're seeing there as well.
Yeah, I thought the same, Aaron. The other thing I was reflecting on was the insight on your last US mission that you brought back, where because the seed rounds in the US from a dollar value are mostly higher than those in Australia, and we quite often do a pre-Series A round here, that maybe it's a combination of those things where Australian Series A is generally further along. We've got different metrics, and so it'd be really interesting to see the Australian overlay on this and how that would also change the data.
Yeah, it's a good point. And for founders that missed that episode we recorded, it was the pickup that when we say pre-Series A in Australia, in the US, that's taken to mean anything before a Series A round, which in their world is only pre-seed, seed, Series A. They don't have a pre-Series A or a bridging round. They actually see that as a negative sign that the company is struggling. So it's a good pickup on that too, Ash. I wonder if that will change over there at any point.
And maybe they will just do a pre-Series A and they might just need that small bridging to get that slight tech build or whatever it is in order to get to that. Will it be a Series B if the metrics are in line with what a Series B company would look like, but they haven't raised? Like, how is all of this going to change? I think it's going to be fascinating to watch.
Because then we'll actually have to evolve and whatever else. So we'll become a pre-Series A specialist.
Like we've talked about previously, with the pressure to win the deal, we'll be going on DNA testing of parents and offering term sheets before children are born.
That's true. Now, one of the things that I think can help in that raising of pre-Series A is regular shareholder updates, even when you don't want to, or even when you're too busy. So Jevon LaRue, he talks about doing StartMate, but the power of updates. He said, investor updates can feel like a grind, uncomfortable, vulnerable, easy to avoid. I used to dread them until I realized they're one of the most valuable things to do. Every Monday during StartMate, I sent one. Every first of the month now, he still sends one. There were months where he didn't. He told himself the narrative wasn't strong enough, no big wins, no momentum, so he stayed quiet, but that's a trap. It's all about consistency, showing up, fronting up, being straight, even when it's hard. I can't get behind that enough. On the list of a few founders, and their numbers aren't yet where they would need to be, but they're demonstrating consistency. They're demonstrating backability. One of the deals we're looking at the moment, Jack engaged quite a lot with him. Jack then sent a task to go and do, and the founder went and did it and just demonstrated his ability to execute. So that's the signal that we're actually looking for.
Every word of this is so true. And being behind on last quarter's update, I'm absolutely feeling every lived word of this. And hence a call I made to Don a couple of weeks back saying, let's set up a monthly call with shareholders and venture partners just so we have a consistent regime of updates, which will hold me accountable. And it gives me something, using the calendar as a blunt instrument. All the things we say to founders to do, should actually take my own medicine and do it.
But I haven't really supporting that, because there's a section where you want to put like, Don hasn't given me his expenses yet.
We only talk about that in the podcast.
That's where we air our dirty laundry. when I was taking that call and recording it, that should have been the time where I was making portfolio updates, because the same situation is with us. If you want to build trust with your investors, you get the updates out.
Yeah, one other point there as well, Don. So I think another point for founders is that actually forcing yourself to sit down and reflect on it. Like, a lot of the value accrues to the writer, not just the reader. So I think there's a consistency part that an investor can actually be sitting back and saying, tick, tick, tick. But the reality is you guys are running so fast and you don't have a time to sit down and think, is what we're doing actually working? And if it's not, how can we make some changes? So I think forcing yourself once a month to do the report, like, the value is going to actually accrue to you. And it might just be that we can see something and help, but there are so many follow-on effects from just forcing yourself to do it.
Completely agree with that. And so there's an assumption in that your structured template of reporting is getting you to report on and think about the right metrics. And this is where, again, referencing Adrian DeMarco, because he's front of mind from last night, but his concept of the 1-pager or the 2-pager report that we've adopted for portcos and we've adopted into our own shareholder reporting means exactly that, Jack. Like, updating the report this time around, looking at our metrics, you actually have some data. And it is confronting when you see the parts that are not working and you recognize, well, we haven't been putting attention there because of these reasons. But the other thing as well, for me, the process, absolutely. But that tendency that founders have of report when the times are good and hold back when the times are bad is it's almost like you should be doing the opposite, because there's no one with a greater invested interest in helping you through the problems and challenges than the people who actually own part of your company that are on your cap table. They have skin in the game. And so this is something for me where I tend not to ask for help when I should, but actually using these as an opportunity to say, hey, here's how things really are. Here's the problems we are grappling with. Here's the help that we need. And they will help. Like, they are phenomenally valuable. If you've chosen the right investors and you've got the right shareholders, they absolutely will add a ton of value in those moments.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel North American maybe culture or founders have a tendency to just ask for help faster. From some of the innovation consulting I've done, I'm on lists of founders to get updates. I was looking at strategic M&A deals for our corporate clients, and the consistency and this is what we're looking for. If you know anyone in your network, can you help connect us? This is what we need in order to help us grow. Here is how you can help us. And they just put the ask in there. And I think from a cultural perspective, that's a really good thing to just start to learn what your natural cadence is. And I think with the different tools on the market now, if writing isn't your style, you don't have an excuse. The barrier to entry is so low. Yes, you can set up a framework, like you said, Aaron, that 1-pager, here are the topics, but you can put voice GPT on, Claude, whatever, and just have a conversation with it. Here are the things I need to do. Let's now ask questions in order for me to have the draft content there to review it, record a Loom, whatever it is that feels right for you as a founder. Just get in the habit, even if the first couple of Loom recordings don't go anywhere and you translate it into a transcript and whatever else. It's the act of doing it. And just remember to put an ask out there. The worst thing that's going to happen is no one replies.
It will get to a point, won't it, where we've just got this AI that's reading all your emails, listening to your calls, and then it actually does the update. But then the problem is,
I was thinking more like Staying on Society.
Yeah, it's done an assessment and it's decided that you should give the money back to investors. Yeah. One little bit of news that I just thought was interesting during the week, just to touch on, is that Telstra's going to put boots on the ground in Silicon Valley, joining Commonwealth Bank as its largest big Australian company set up a US hub. Telstra's group executive for product, Kim Crow Anderson, who is in California helping set up the venture, told AFR the hub would help it figure out what technology is coming next, speed up its AI adoption, and let it embrace the region's can-do attitude. You can only be in the forefront if you somehow get access to the talent and expertise where it's moving the fastest, and that's in the Valley at the moment. And Jack, I think it relates to that. There was an investor that you spoke to. No, it was Jake that I was having a chat to. One of the investors on his cap table has moved to Austin, and it's just this whole place, whether it's San Fran or Austin, leaves Australia for dead. If you're in this environment, you can't help but just work a little harder, work a little smarter, try and pull your socks up. And with these big companies, this is probably one of the smartest things I've seen someone like Telstra do. Normally what would happen is some highly paid person from a desk in Sydney would be trying to drive the strategy, but let's get into the environment where the people that are most likely to have the expertise and see things coming are going to be. I think this is a smart strategy that other, even smaller companies can learn from.
Didn't they have a presence in Silicon Valley previously and shut it down and now reopening?
They've got Telstra, what was Telstra Ventures, that's now been spun out. I'm pretty sure they're no longer an LP, and it's been rebranded. But Mark Shearman and the team are still there with that, just not part of Telstra anymore.
Okay.
There was, so Mura D, the accelerator, which was part of Telstra, did at one point have Mick Lubinskas as the EIR based in Silicon Valley. But as far as I know, this is the first time Telstra Headco
Got it.
has done this.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I have very mixed feelings about this, having worked out of the JP Morgan Innovation Hub in Hudson Yards, where it was just a JP Morgan office with some bean bags and scooters and ping pong tables. That was, we could write on the windows in the conference rooms, but...
Oh, innovation.
Oh, yeah. Corporate innovation, love it.
So you're saying that the big companies' culture still can't, even if it's in the environment, the culture will still not get with the program.
Look, it can be done. It's just bloody hard. And that's why 11.2 exists, is to help these businesses. But after having done it for 4 years, I've seen so many different businesses try. Some fail, some do it successfully. There's different iterations, but I think the ones that I've seen it do it best have a combination of some type of corporate venture team, like Telstra Ventures. Then they have a team that kind of bridges between Ventures and Headco. And so Chevron Ventures is a great example. So their venture arm, they have a team that is a VC, and they are pure financial VC. So like us in the industry, they're looking to make good deals and they're looking to have a financial return for the Headco. They also have a team that just does pilots. So their entire job is to go out and look outwards to the world and see what startups are making widgets that can make Chevron better. They do not have to have an investment in that startup to do a pilot program, which I thought was really interesting. Then there's a strategy team, and this strategy team is the one looking 5 to 10 years ahead, building what they think the strategy should look like. That then feeds the mothership strategy team, who's looking at 3 to 5 years. And so I think it's you can't just be in a location and have an office. There has to be some type of corporate structure and cross-pollination in order for this to have benefits. But I think it's a step in the right direction, but I would be really interested, and Aaron, maybe we can reach out to them and see if we can actually visit them when we do the next US mission to see how they are trying to look at that. So I think, beyond just being there, it's how do you actually interact and have startups and scale-ups be a part of that, and you can actually buy from them. That's a lot of the friction that I've seen.
Totally agree, Ash. I think we could almost do a podcast episode entirely on corporate innovation programs we've seen succeed and fail. So it's interesting. This article also mentions the Commonwealth Bank. Previously, when I was running the UK missions under Startup Catalyst, we would visit the CBA's Innovation Lab in London. And it was, honestly, one of the most waste of time innovation programs I've seen a corporate do. If I compare it, just very quickly, Porsche Digital Labs in Germany, true open innovation center. So beautiful facility, open door. Anyone could come in and work out of there. That if you're a startup, they would run sessions in there on their biggest challenges for Porsche around autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles, and all the other car manufacturers are in the room doing true open collaboration. Versus the Commonwealth Bank lab in London, which was on floor 6 through high security. You had to give ID in advance. They would background check you. They actually refused entry to one of our participants because they were working on something in fintech that CBA might be internally working. This is not innovation, guys. And then you get up there and it was exactly like you described. It was like pre-staged glass panels that had the marker pen formulas written on it. What even is that up there? Oh, we don't know. It's some sessions. Yeah, this is just crap. So yeah, I feel like Ash, we could do a whole segment on that.
Well, Ishak Adizes, Dr. Ishak Adizes, in that video, he did quite a lot of stuff with Porsche. And so it doesn't really surprise me that that kind of process was there. He was actually given a personalized Porsche that they put a special plate on, and he didn't lock it and it got stolen. So yeah, tell me you're an E without telling me you're an E. I'm just mindful of time. We've run a little bit over. I'm going to push some of these other ones to next week because the secondaries conversation, Ash, I think is an important one, but requires a bit more.
Yeah. It's not a new story that has a time frame either.
Yeah. I was going to also talk about, and just pretty quickly, but company pages on LinkedIn, by the way, there's a report that's been released that they are objectively dead. In this report that came out, that company posts in feeds make up less than 1% now. Like the LinkedIn algorithm is just trying to kill company posts. It's all individual, it's all founder, or it's nothing. Under the heading of like, we are so back, just quickly, Elizabeth Holmes's partner has set up a new blood testing company. So all that's old is new again. And did you see that Adam Newman, i.e. of WeWork, has just raised another $100 million at a $2.5 billion valuation for his property startup?
I wonder if his deck was like Blackbird's. Same team, same formula, same result.
There is a little bit like founders that can bust through walls. I think you can have like too little shame, but actually they don't feel a lot of shame around any past issues. So they don't actually have that inbuilt human thing to hold them back. And I think there is still a lesson to be learned there of whether it's imposter syndrome or whatever it might be, that actually there's this little correlation of what sometimes isn't a bad kind of behavior to not be able to recognize the past. It is the kind of thing that keeps entrepreneurs in the game. So don't forget that.
And investors are willing to write him another check. So
yep. Well, very quick theme of the week. I'm going to steal the easy one after that UniQuest workshop. My theme with the portfolio and various things is health and healthy development, and that was really reiterated again last night with the session with Adrian. And so my theme is just reflecting back on where are people at in terms of that healthy development, because we've got some portfolio that are really maturing and they're getting out of that sort of scary adolescence phase where I lie in bed questioning the decision to allocate life to this asset class. But we've now got quite a number that are in that phase that there's no longer the uncertainty around business model and whatever else. It's an execution problem. And so that's a pretty good place to be if you're confident you've got some tools and frameworks to support them on execution. So that's my theme.
love it. I'm going to take that thread on maturing. This week, I have been really reflective on our process and trying to mature the way that we interact with investors and actually put some type of structure and thinking around it that enables us to have those points in the diary that force us to send updates, but also have those touch points with each of them. Our investors are very important to us, but I think we are now at a point in our business where we've allocated resources to it. And so now we need to just find the new cadence of that interaction. So it's not just Aaron and Don taking the large brunt of having those phone calls, because that's who's been doing it. And how do we restructure that to enable all of us to add value and maintain relationships, but also provide us scale, particularly as we go into raising a fund and then having all of our fund investors to need to have those updates and so forth. So a lot of thinking on how this scales, how we can use agents, how we can automate things to be able to create leverage so that instead of us using time writing documents or doing a lot of administration, that time can be like, Aaron, Don, here are the 5 people you need to call this week. Here are the updates that they're expecting, but you can actually use that time to be impactful.
I thought a similar thing last night, Ash, because there were about 4 or 5 people that actually specifically came up after saying really interested in the fund. One of them was just as he was leaving, and I was in the middle of a conversation. I don't know who he is, so I was too embarrassed in the middle of the other conversation. So I've now got to go through the attendee list, go to LinkedIn, try and do a facial recognition. But it did highlight to me, probably going to get a little bit better at reading the room. So let's work on that tomorrow in the time that you have foisted upon my calendar.
I'll add it to the agenda.
That's gold. My week's been a few things. So like between cold inbounds, writing a few memos, investor updates, and then upskilling Pat, our intern turned analyst. So I suppose the theme would probably be like focus, or I wouldn't say lack of focus, but like just prioritizing the content switching, which I'm probably not great at, but it's just getting my head around that. But that's been my week.
I've got a similar vein, Jack, like the power of automation. So, and just reflecting on doing the shareholders report and just reflecting on time allocation. And we run quite a cadence of missions and offsites, which is a lot of one-to-one hand-to-combat sales, but so is our syndicated investments. That's also requires a lot of one-to-one hand-to-hand combat. Back to your point, Ash, like we do a lot of that outreach. But the beauty with this SA government funding contract is now I can set up all these automations for the US mission. I've got Dripify running for the cold outbound. I've got another campaign setting up for the warm outbound. And so the ability to actually just automate a lot of that. At some point, it's still, though, for me, just looking at the opportunity cost of my time allocation and making sure that I've got Adrian's voice from last night in my head, like the tactical is aligning with the strategic in the right way. And yes, we do all these things and they're all tactical and they all align, but there's also a priority. Like we need to get deals done and we need to have funds under management of a certain level in order for our operating budget to work, and that carries on. So for me, it's, Jack, to your point, like just a big focus on time allocation.
All right, that's good. Now, because I have been so busy, Ash will be very pleased that I don't actually have much Sharts. But what it means is I've replaced it with some rubbish content. So
Wait, you've replaced Sharts with rubbish content.
So this I don't know where this lives, but this is like a LinkedIn funny thing. I think I thought I'd just play it.
How's Ash's body language just before? Like she's like shielding herself from what's about to come.
Okay.
1 billion people on LinkedIn in the world. 1 in 2 people are thought leaders. It's crazy. 500 million thought leaders. Okay. So, and when you're a thought leader, there's lessons everywhere, right? You go to the park. It's a lovely day. There's a squirrel staring you out. Okay. Oh, this is good stuff. Okay. Here's 25 things I learned about leadership from watching a squirrel in the park. Number 1, be agile. Number 2, store value for winter. And number three, trust your tail. Okay.
We're gonna love it.
Accurate.
Yeah, the thought leader has a special meaning amongst our hearts. I haven't even put them in the run sheet. I'll just pull them straight out of my email. Just hold on. I have no idea why this picture is in the Sharts, but just so you're aware, this is what my chippies have done. See how there's that big gap between that timber and the bottom of that joist? How am I supposed to put a VJ sheet on that? It's like they've used the wrong type of clips and now I'm going to have to batten the bloody thing out. And anyway, unbelievable. So this is a chart of China valuations and then their combined PE ratios going back to 1995. And if you just have a look at how cheap the China market is relative to its history, Adrian last night talked about how he is long China from some of his listed allocations. But China is a volatile market as for people at home. The average PE sort of runs from like 10 to, the average PE in the 12-month trailing forward PE, like 10 to 50. Like that is a hell of a range, but it's been sitting along the bottom for a little while.
Tom, that also correlates with when China's market actually opened to outside investors. It started to be less volatile since you could go onshore from an exchange perspective as well.
Yep. No, that's good point. This is the poly market percentage chance of a US recession, which Donald came in, did his tariff announcement, all of that. It hit 66% in May. It's actually fallen now to 39%. With what he's pulled back on and whatever else, the markets are actually reducing their percentage chance significantly of a recession in 25, which I think is probably good for everyone. But speaking of polymarket, here, this is the Nancy Pelosi bet. It's the US banning stock trading. That has gone from 10% to 40%. So you can bet on everything these days. This is the US bankruptcy filings by year. And you can see, look at that GFC. The US, and I can't really work out what the breakdown is, but let's say the total number for the year is the one at the top. So that was like 560 back in 2004, 858 in 2005, 1,092 in 2006. And then we know what happened in 2007, 2008, 2009, the GFC. So the bankruptcies were actually like a leading indicator in that. And what this chart is trying to say is that they've put a different color for the year to date through to April and then the rest of the year. And the year to date through April is actually has risen fairly substantially compared to the prior quieter years. And so with what's occurring, it's going to be interesting to see what happens at the rest of the year if 2025 ends up being more than 2024, which was more than 23, which was more than 22. So is this the early stage of that run? But there's conflicting data always in these kinds of situations.
Interesting that the majority of the bankruptcies happen second half of the year.
Yeah, I think that maybe the new year gives people fresh perspective and energy, and by the end of it, they go, "Oh fuck it, I'm done."
Yeah, they also work on calendar year for financial year as well.
Oh.
Maybe that could be an indicator.
Ash, I'm really appreciating the engagement so far. This is
minus the first one. These have been semi-interesting.
So let's see if we can ruin it. This is a chart. This is a 4-quadrant actually of kink popularity by age and gender. The only problem is you can't read. I haven't been able to work out what the kinks are. It just has older to younger, male to female, and it's plotting what the various kinks are. For a start, I didn't realize that there were that many kinks. Like,
I don't really know what we're talking about. I'm too scared to Google it.
You don't know what a kink is?
I think this is a really smart campaign by OPSM to sell glasses to middle-aged men.
The 500 most popular kinks of female and males graphed by their derivation of age. So that's why it's gone like older to younger, male to female, and then it's plotted it. But it's so small you can't.
I've put it together now. Okay.
But anyway, everyone loves a 4-quadrant, don't they? I know Jack does. Silence again. Can I just say it's very awkward having edited last time when no one's got their mics on and I'm left alone dangling in the wind.
With your kinks.
Your red lights.
And then finally, when someone is rude to you, instead of quickly retaliating, you should pause. Consider the personal struggles that they might be going through, the emotional hardships that could be causing them such pain. That's their weak point. That's what you need to exploit when you strike back.
Jeez. Love it.
So a bit poor this week, but it just shows you that I've actually been quite busy.
Oh, it's good. So that one, the first one you showed, the one on...
So Aaron, going back to the kinks.
No, the one on the recession probability, was that purely on sentiment?
Oh, it's just the betting market. So all it is, the poly market, like Polymarket is a place where you can go and bets and take sides. So it's just purely that betting market had placed the chance at 66%, and now it's dropped to 39%.
So the punters sentiment, you got it.
Yeah. But when it's going to be interesting to see if we get a rate cut here. The problem is, I guess, some of the stuff that I engage in from the family office side is I don't see like a lot of slowdown, especially in some of the construction. But having said that, for the first time, I got an agent who I hadn't spoken to in 12 months call me about a property that they still haven't sold on Morton Island. And so when that discretionary end turns and then agents actually start like doing a job of proactively calling potential buyers on behalf of their sellers, that's the kind of behavior when things are a bit soft.
We're getting bombarded. We've been looking at places
every agent calling about everything. The other thing, we're still trying to sell the Kluger, and the used car market is just absolutely paused. And I've been shopping for a motorbike, and I've got people willing to ride the bike from interstate to sell it.
No way.
Yeah, it is nuts. But yet, the weekend at Westfield Chermside, if you go by the Westfield car park index, bloody spend is high. Like, it was packed. So it's just a weird moment in time, I feel.
But people aren't rational, right? If I was to show you our bank account and then Anna's frequency to Westfield, it's like bank's going down. She's still going to the shopping centre. It's like,
yeah. Oh, we were talking about this, like where shopping becomes a form of entertainment or child minding. Like it's taken a life of its own.
And lipstick is a leading indicator of a recession. Just a random one for you.
What?
When lipstick sales increase, it is more likely to have a recession. And post-recession, women's hemlines of skirts get longer.
Really?
Yeah.
I saw one about a particular model of Ferraris, and I think it was Louis Vuitton handbags as a precursor to economic cycles.
Yeah, it's like the lowest luxury you can have.
Lipstick index. There you go.
Well, just I guess if difficult times are coming, and just being in a startup is difficult, right? I just want to leave with this just to end the show before we say goodbye.
Some thought leadership.
Oh, no.
Oh, my friend, it appears that you've forgotten that nobody has a fucking clue what's going on. We are talking monkeys on an oxygen-rich, water-heavy rock floating in space. Nothing about what I just said makes any sense at all, yet it's absolutely true. Listen, the only person you need to answer to is Mother Nature. The rest of it is man-made hogwash created by fucked up senile old men who want to capture your heart and mind for ultimate profit at best and planetary control and manipulation at worst. So my advice would just to be get out, hug a tree, get back to being human, and fuck the rest of the shit that's spiraling you into an endless confusion.
How's that to end?
It sounds like an ad for our offsite.
Just, yeah. It's the old Buddhist thing. Behave like it's the most important thing in the world, whilst realizing nothing really matters at all. That's the middle ground you got to find. So
I'm so proud of you until that one, Dom.
what's wrong? Is it because the guy's wearing a carpet with a hole in the head with a microphone on the end of an axe? Is that why you don't?
Speaking into a tomahawk throwing axe.
His message is true, is it not, Ash? What do you have wrong with his message?
I have no words. I'm done.
All right, team.
On that note.
I'd say good episode, but I don't want to lie.
Thanks, team.